Hey there, everyone. I'm Samuel Johnson, and welcome back to the Ben 10 Retrospectives. And I know it's strange that I'm doing a vlog on Saturday, especially since I've actually done my vlog for the week, but I decided I would watch Ben 10. I watched the fourth season of Ben 10 a little earlier because I kind of am a little excited because we're almost done and I kind of like and I thought the first episode of season 4 was usually pretty good, and so I popped it season 4, so I popped the DVD and I watched it, and I don't know why, but it was different than what I remember. Like, really different. I don't know if this was me being a dumb kid or something, or if I was just wearing nostalgia goggles, or it was a very different than what was supposed to be, and after watching it, I thought I needed to record my thoughts on it now rather than wait till next week. So for our third Saturday episode, we're going to be talking about episode 40 of the original Ben 10 series, and I think this is a reboot. I don't know why, but for some reason they rebooted the show in this one. I don't know how, but they did. Like, you still have Ben, Gwen, and Max here, but they're really, really different. Like, Ben's voice sounds a lot deeper for some reason. It doesn't sound like a kid anymore. I think they changed voice actors for him. And the same thing goes for Gwen. Her voice is kind of around the same pitch, but it's the same. But it's very different and just kind of more excitable, more energetic. And then Max. Max is really different. Like, when it comes, like, kind of think of it, all three of them are different, and some are very different. Like, Ben, for some reason, Ben is no longer his kind of laid back whatever self and just kind of cocky. For some reason, he seems a little bit more paranoid in this version. He doesn't really do much, actually, scratch that. He does do stuff, and he's still the hero of the show of this because it's still Ben 10. But for some reason, he's more paranoid. He's more grouchy, more complainy, and it's just kind of different. And Gwen is no longer critical, cynical, and just insulting Ben. She's more energetic and fun and really very happy about everything. And it's just kind of odd. And Max, my lord, he's really different. Like, he's now more, like, his voice is now deeper and more grungy and so forth. And for some reason he doesn't really do that much in this episode. He's not even that very help. He doesn't even help Ben or Gwen when stuff happens, and stuff does happen in the episode, but it's very different. Like, it's still summer vacation. Like, in this episode, for example, it's still summer vacation, and Ben and Gwen are still with Max, but for some reason they changed it up, and so instead of them traveling around the country in the rust bucket and fighting bad guys and so forth, Ben and Gwen apparently go to see their grandpa Max in this little town called something Springs. I don't know. But while he owns this little shop or whatever, there's other people working there. This teenage girl who just doesn't really seem to care about much, and then this weird idiot guy that seems to get all these dumb jobs. But pretty much Ben and Gwen are forced to work for Max, which doesn't, I don't know. It just kind of seems very different, it's very strange that Max would force him to work at a shop, but for some reason, Ben, of course, is just kind of curious about everything, and I don't know what. It's just kind of, he gets bad vibes from this place, and he doesn't really trust anything, but people just keep calling him paranoid and so forth. But But in the beginning of this episode, Max has him go out and set up these signs advertising his shop, and while out in the woods, Ben, because wherever they are, it's surrounded by woods. Ben comes across this strange secret capsule, and I'm just thinking to myself, so this is where he finds the Omnitrix, right? Because again, it's a reboot. For some reason, Ben doesn't have the Omnitrix now, which is okay, which is fine that it's redoing everything. So of course, they'd have to start from the beginning. But he doesn't find it. He doesn't find the Omnitrix. It's just kind of weird. Ben does not have the Omnitrix in this entire episode, which is distracting. Because it's called Ben 10. The whole point of the show is Ben having this cool watch that he can transform into all these different heroes. That's why it was called Ben 10. He originally had 10 aliens, but no. Instead, he finds a weird book that details all these weird creatures and aliens and so forth, and he's of course just getting freaked out. He doesn't know what's going on. He brings it with him and shows it to Gwen, and for some reason in this version of events, Ben and Gwen are now siblings instead of cousins, which I don't really understand that, but he shows it to Gwen. He doesn't, of course, she doesn't really, and while she does believe him, she doesn't really pay much mind to it, as she somehow she now has a boyfriend, which is this weird tall kid. I think it might be Kevin. I don't know. I thought it was Kevin originally, but not so much. The episode kind of disproved that. I don't know. Maybe it is Kevin. I don't know. But Ben, for some reason, thinks this guy is just this monstrous creature. He starts following him and Gwen around, but he can't get any proof so he thinks maybe he was just being paranoid, and even Gwen calls him out on it. But but upon looking through the footage, he finds that that this guy is falling apart, literally. So Ben chases after them, and then when Gwen and this guy are alone, it's revealed that, well, Kevin's also very different here. Kevin can't absorb everything. He's a bunch of little creatures. Gnomes, apparently, which is kind of weird for Ben 10. And this is a show where you got a guy with skull makeup who shoots magic lasers out of a staff with a skull on the top. I think it's a vulture. And then you have his niece who's a psychotic. You got all these weird things, and suddenly you have gnomes? What are gnomes doing here? This is Ben 10, for crying out loud. Why are gnomes here? But I don't know. But bottom line, so the gnomes want Gwen to be their queen or whatever. She of course says no, and so they kidnap her. And so Ben goes to save her, taking a cart that the teenage girl apparently she just gives it to him. I don't know. Maybe she's aware. I think maybe she's aware that they fight bad guys or something. I don't know. But she goes to save Gwen. They manage to get away, but the gnomes for some reason turn into this giant thing. And I'm just looking at this and I'm just thinking to myself, why doesn't he have the Omnitrix? If he went forearms or cannon bolt or any of his aliens, he could take them on. And yet this is all this stuff it's taking. I don't know why. I don't really understand it. But they manage to, the gnomes chase them down. It looks like they're cornered, but Gwen is still smart here, so she manages to convince the gnomes that she will be their queen, but she then uses the leaf blower that she had been using earlier in the episode, which she mentioned because she got a shiner from it. She was practicing kissing Kevin, but then got a little, again, shiner. But she uses that to take the head gnome and blast them apart, and then they use it to blast all the gnomes away, and it's just kind of. And in the end of the episode, Ben is it's kind of strange that they get happy, but everything's fine and happy, but at the end of the episode, as Ben is wrapping this up and summarizing everything in the journal that he got, which it's still kind of weird that it's not the Omnitrix. You see Max kind of going down, is in the living room. He hits something on a little vending machine, and there's a secret passageway behind it, and I don't know what that is. I don't know what this is. Because, is this a plumber thing? Does his little shack have a plumber thing? Is the shack going to be the new Rust Bucket? Because it's just kind of strange, and that's how I'm feeling throughout this whole episode. I'm looking at everything, and I'm just thinking to myself, It's just kind of weird. Because I don't remember Ben 10 being like this. It's just a major overhaul. And it's just, like, everything's changed. Ben is now... We got extra characters. We got a different setup. And now... And for some reason... everyone... And for some reason, the very thing that made the show called Ben 10 is no longer in it. It's just... You have a book with all this weird stuff. You got Ben... not having superpowers, seeing Gwen are just kids. They even look different. Like Max doesn't have his Hawaiian shirt anymore. He's wearing a black suit with this weird hat or whatever. Yeah, he also seems to be kind of more of a jerk here. Like he doesn't pay really much attention to his grandchildren. And then you got Ben and Gwen, and their dynamic is very different. There's a little hostility there, but they're really friendly to each other. Like there's no real conflict between the two. And then you just got these other characters that I don't really know why they're even here. Like because the real strength of Ben 10 was always in Ben, Gwen, and Max doing their thing. And even just to see all this stuff, and even just to see these new villains, these gnomes, which is still weird. Why are there gnomes in this place? I don't understand. It just kind of feels off. Like, kind of weird. And I don't understand why it's so different. Why it was such a big overhaul. And I don't understand why I don't remember this. Because I remember everything else about Ben 10. That was the joy of rewatching this. That I see reliving this show after all this time and getting to re-experience it. And yet for some reason when I got to this episode, it was very different than I remember it. And it just feels very... It just doesn't feel right. I mean, it's not bad. No, don't get me wrong. It's not bad by any means. Because there are still some funny jokes here. Like seeing Ben constantly trying to convince Gwen that, oh, this guy you're dating is bad news, don't go with him, and just seeing all this evidence and so forth, because Ben thinks this guy is, I don't know, mummy? I don't know. I don't really understand it either. I think maybe it's a mummy. I don't know. Maybe it's like another alien mummy or something. Or what maybe he thought was another alien mummy. But either way, he's just trying to constantly convince her. It's kind of funny. Seeing Gwen's chipper attitude is just kind of amusing, especially with... And even Max, while his personality is really different, he gets another type of laughs as he's just doing all this stuff, as he just seems to be in the background like, yeah, whatever. It's funny. And I do admit that the climax is still kind of fun, seeing Ben and Gwen have to outmaneuver all this giant thing of gnomes and just kind of go, and ultimately fighting them off, and ultimately being able to fight them off with something they established earlier on, because it's still a fine episode. It really is. It's just that my big problem with it is just how it's so different, and I don't understand how. So again, can't really think of much else. I can't really think of much else to say. It's just I'm confused, and I don't know. Maybe I'll get on. Maybe as I keep watching, it'll make more sense, and maybe it'll be good. I don't know. It just kind of feels strange, and the way the show's set up, I don't really know how life would last that long, especially being just changing it up so quickly. That's probably the reason why this is the last season. It just didn't click. People just didn't like it, and so no one else watched it. So I guess that's really all I have to say on this matter. It's a fine episode. It's just big problem is big changes and weird situations. So. Okay. So I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I guess I'll see you next week as we try and see where Ben 10 will go from here. So yeah. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and April Fools.